BeTheTalk, episode 263, featuring Crystal Kadakia. Welcome to BeTheTalk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Crystal Kadakia. Crystal, are you ready to talk?
Hit it.
Crystal Kadakia is an international keynoter, a leading author, and an experience consultant, helping leaders reimagine the workplace for a digital world. Crystal's unconventional millennial approach has reached clients from the United States to Norway to China. Crystal is also a 30 under 30 winner. Crystal Kadakia, welcome to the talk.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
So your talk is called Millennials Digital Coma or Digitally Empowered, and you've given multiple. Your other one is called Corporate Fail, Gen Z are Entrepreneurial. And you talk a lot about just the concept of YOLO out there. 72% of millennials, this is very interesting to me. I didn't know 72% want to be business owners. And if you can help me understand this a little outside as well, but I know they heavily favored Bernie Sanders as a group in the last election, which, I'm an old stodgy Gen Xer here. So that doesn't quite makes sense to me, but that's why we're having an open dialogue. I want to learn. I want to discover how those two things are congruous as well. And you talk about YOLO. You only live once. And I love how you spell out how I feel. Why am I doing this podcast? Because I don't want to be behind the desk, shackled, all the things that you mentioned, that, no future and do what somebody else says and hierarchies and all of that stuff that you mentioned. I like to say I'm the 43-year-old millennial, or at least I self-identify as a millennial. That's my little tie-in, but over to you, Crystal Kadakia. Welcome to the talk.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I've talked about many things, and I think for me, the heart of it is really examining how digital technology has changed people's worldviews, and especially millennials growing up in that environment, and even more so Generation Z. And so what I talk about in both of those talks is I talk a little bit about the positives and the ways that we can leverage technology in a way that benefits us. And I talk about what happens when we don't think about it, when we start to become consumers of digital technology, or in the workplace when we're not consciously adapting to the fact that digital's here. It's not going away for any generation. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about, and that's what I've been really struck by, is how are we using technology in a way that fuels us versus disempowers us or disenfranchises us or confuses us or overwhelms us. And so, I've thought a lot about millennials specifically because I'm a millennial, for one thing. And I really feel like we're a very pivotal generation because we're the last generation to remember a world before the internet. And that's a huge statement, right? If you think back to when, electricity was invented, right? It was a very before and after. There was a time before that where nobody knew anything about a world with electricity. And after that, it's instant and it changes the world and skills become obsolete. Some skills are new, other skills are transferred. And it's an incredible change. And there's people who will be born who no longer remember the world before electricity. And that's the same transition we're going through now. And it's an important one because in this one, we're dealing with the way we learn, the way we communicate, the way we take in information. Those are all things that have to do with the way our brains are wired. And so we're seeing rewiring happening so fast. And the thing that really started bothering me was when we got into this whole cycle about complaining about millennials, when really it was like, hey guys, this is just a symptom. This is a generation that's growing up with this digital technology that, by the way, you're selling and marketing to us, and you're not going to uninvent. So you need to start thinking about the impacts of digital, especially in the place where we spend most of our days, which is at work. And that's where we are lagging the most in terms of adapting to digital technology. Our personal lives, fully digital, no problem. Corporate workplaces, it's like dinosaur times. And we've got to figure out how to adapt. And both of those talks touch on those topics.
Well, and it's a massive, massive pain point. And really what it is, doesn't matter which generation you're a part of. This is a really important discussion for you because we're trying to bring things back together. Crystal's trying to bring it back together. I'm trying to bring it back together. And all of us have plenty of things that we need to do to have to adapt, to have to be super flexible, to kind of bite our lip a little bit and listen to the other people who are out there. Now, the boomers and the Xers, like me, we have all kinds of little things, but that we complain about. But millennials have a lot of things as well, and this is the world that we created, like it or not. So, Crystal, back to you. What are some things that we can do to really listen to each other? And better yet, could you give me just a couple of maybe little case studies of times that you came into an organization, did a workshop, whatever, you confronted this very thing that I'm talking about, and people were able to work it out? I'd love to hear a couple of stories.
Yeah. I think one of the places we've got to start is really in this zone of stop complaining and start putting yourself in each other's shoes. So one of the things that I do that is so fun is I recently wrote a book, came out last year, called The Millennial Myth. And in it, I address 5 of the biggest stereotypes we hold about millennials: lazy, entitled, they're the trophy generation, and so on. And one of the things I do with that is I do a workshop for companies, and I've gone in and we created this millennial oriented game of life. Have you ever played Life?
Oh yeah, the game. Oh, I'm a Generation Xer, so that's all we had were board games, Crystal.
Yeah.
Come on, we had board games and the Atari 2600. That's all we had.
Exactly. Those are great, right? The mind loves a game, and we went back. You could call it, I went old school on you. And in these workshops, we go through a game of life, and we walk through events that have occurred in the last 30 years. We have cross-generational teams playing the game, and they're really talking about and thinking about what might it have been like to go through that event as a 6-year-old versus a 30-year-old. And just making that shift of, instead of being like, well, in the present time, I hate these things about you, to being like, let me form a little bit of empathy here and think about what it might have been like in your shoes. How might that have shaped your view towards work and life? That was one of the most powerful workshops I've conducted. And at the end, it's just so great to hear people talking on another level, a new language, where they're not using those words like lazy and entitled, or boomers are not into technology and they don't know how to use their phones, and I'm their IT support. You just take one step away from those complaints, and underneath all of that, you start really finding out that we've got a lot to connect on, a lot to learn from one another, and a lot that we could do to build a better workplace in the future. Things don't always have to be done the way they've been done, because we do have things that can make life easier now. So why not use some of those things?
Well, we've been enjoying this discussion with Crystal Kadakia. Oh, my word. What a cool sounding workshop that is. She's given a couple of talks. One of them is called Corporate Fail. Gen Z are entrepreneurial. And we're going to talk more with Crystal in just a moment over in the Blitz Round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast? It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. Welcome back to the Blitz Round with Crystal Kadakia. I'm about to ask Crystal a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Crystal, are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
First off, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
So the first TED Talk I did, I applied to speak, and they were still looking for speakers, so it worked out great. The second one, I was invited to speak, and that's something that I think is really cool. Once you've done one TED Talk, people come to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Would you call yourself a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
I'm definitely a bit of a memorizer, especially for TED Talks. There's something to be said about having the words that are most impactful crafted for your idea that matters. And so I'm definitely a memorizer. We practiced for 2 months in advance with the coach. We had to rehearse it numerous times in front of the team. So it was a very rigorous process. So definitely erred on the side of memorization.
So you walk out on stage. Did you have nerves? Were you in the zone, or neither or both?
I was terrified the night before. I was terrified the moment before. And then the moment I walked on the stage, and by the way, this was just the second talk I'd ever given in my life.
Oh my.
So
wow.
I now have a professional speaking career, and I'm just one of those people who just dives in deep whenever they want to do something new and just goes for the challenge. So this was the first TEDx talk I did. It was my second talk in my life. I was terrified. And what I learned about myself was, as long as I know the first sentence, and the first sentence is a remarkable opening, the rest of it just flows right out of me.
Powerful.
If I've done the preparation work. And so that's, for me, I was scared up until I said that first sentence. And then it was like I was in another planet, and I was in a zone where I was so focused on just my message that nothing else mattered.
So know your first sentence. Other than that, what's a tip, technique, or a tool that helped you?
Really up your game when it comes to storytelling. So for me, there's great things to be said about logical flows, and I think that's very important. But when you're thinking TED Talks and you're thinking about really powerful talks, really amping up your game around storytelling and getting down to one idea per slide. So it's not just one powerful idea for the whole talk, but one story, one message you want people to walk away with per slide. That's really key. It's almost what you don't say that's just as important as what you do say. I found myself, when I was cutting things out, it was cutting out the over-explanation. We have a tendency to over-explain, and instead really just saying a powerful statement and being comfortable as a speaker to just let that stand.
Well, and that's usually my next question is, what was the most painful part to cut out? And it sounds like philosophically you already understood that, but we can understand how important it is to cut things out, and then actually doing the work, Crystal, to actually cut it out can be a difficult thing. So even though you understand the principle, were there parts that were still difficult for you to cut out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many stories of, you talk about the corporate fail TEDx talk. I mean, that's all about millennial and Gen Z entrepreneurial spirit. There are so many stories, so many people I could have chosen to highlight, so many companies doing great work in that space. And really, it was very, that was the hardest part, was figuring out which stories to tell. And then, not over explaining, having the confidence as a speaker to say, I'm just going to put out that bold statement and let it stand.
Well, we've been enjoying the Blitz round with Crystal Kadakia. Her talks are called Millennials, Digital Coma, or Digitally Powered, as well as the other one, Corporate Fail, Gen Z are Entrepreneurial. If you want to check out either, or preferably both, of those talks, you can go to our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com. We will have links to both. All you have to do is click your finger down on that link. You'll be able to see them, as well as I've got Crystal's LinkedIn profile available right there on the show notes page so that you can connect with Crystal. Oh my gosh, that workshop about the game of life through somebody else of a different age group's eyes, so powerful, and you can connect to Crystal over on LinkedIn. And we're going to be back in just a moment with the final word of advice from Crystal Kadakia. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at BeTheTalk.com. Welcome back, everybody. It is time for the final word of advice to Talk Universe from Crystal Kadakia.
Yeah, so my final word of advice is really to build your resilience and confidence and believe that you really can make and create something. I think a lot of times speakers, consultants, thought leaders, you think you don't have a unique point of view, even if that's your field. And you really do. You can say something from your own experience and have it come out as a really unique point of view. So just think about being bold, really believe you can make or create something, and go up there with that attitude.
Well, Crystal Kadakia, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thanks so much, Nathan.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.